I don't know how many of you were here a couple months ago when I kind of talked about prescription things, so I'll just reintroduce myself to maybe a couple people who don't know me. So I'm Rob Franz. I'm a pharmacist, registered pharmacist, and that's my education. And I came in here and did kind of a prescription talk in January about drugs in the seniors and things like that. So thank you so much for having me back. But I'm also an elder. I've been an elder at this church now since 2002, so for several years now. And I was just telling that I'm actually up for re-vote this June. So if you happen to be, going to this church and you happen to see my name on that ballot, please don't vote against me. You guys do what you want to do. So I'm just teasing. But anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity to meet. And I want to talk to you guys about optimizing your health through nutrition. And no matter what stage of life you're in, nutrition is very important. And I'm going to talk about some things from a pharmacist standpoint. I'm not going to talk about, I'm not a nutritionalist, so there are a lot of things about food specifically I don't know. But I've taken physiology courses, which talk about the body and the cells and things like that. I've also taken biochem, which was just a ridiculous course, but basically talks about all these cycles going on within your bodies, all these chemical reactions going on inside your bodies, like Krebs cycles and things like that, and talks about the way our bodies break down food and what happens, what's the outcome. So I'm going to kind of keep it at a certain level. If you have any questions, just like January when I talk, very informal, please interrupt me. Feel free to ask a question about something, and I'll do my best to provide my answer, again, from a pharmacist standpoint. My training, basically, in physiology and biochem that I was privileged to have up at Ohio State a long time ago, but used throughout my practice constantly. So. It's very important to understand that foods that we eat do affect our health. So I'm going to go basically. You guys have the slides there in front of you, and looking at that first page, kind of the what, how, and why. What foods do to our bodies. And early research in nutrition just really talked about the health benefits of certain foods. But it really didn't get into why that was. People had a general understanding of why it was good to eat vegetables, why it was good to eat, most fruits, but they really didn't understand why was that. And through the advancement of technology, where we can use these ultrafine microscopes now and get in and see the cell function, we can see how these nutrients from the food really affects the cells. So, technology has come such a long way. Our thinking about nutrients have come such a long way. Our thinking about the foods we eat have become a long way. So basically we went to kind of like a survival type of thing. These are the foods we need to basically survive, to really understanding what it is within these foods that really help us survive and what that looks like. And why absolutely, so it's reasonable to have this kind of stuff. So all of our cells, and cells, we're going to really focus on cells here. So cells are the most element form of life within us. They're the smallest form of life within our bodies. And in our cells, that each body has somewhere like 30 trillion cells, 30 trillion. These cells are the building blocks to our body. They make up everything within our bodies, from our bone structure, to our tissues, to our organs. They all have that basic building block of these cells. And within these cells, we have various things. One thing is DNA. And DNA is really the way we replicate these cells. Our cells that we have are constantly, dividing. If you took biology years ago in high school, if you think about that our cells divide constantly to keep our bodies functioning, and that DNA is part of that cell division. So that DNA goes along, and it's very important to realize that DNA within that cell, we have to keep that intact in order to keep healthy cells multiplying within our body. And also, yes, go ahead.
I was just thinking about a little conversation we had, and several remarked about, I used to love so-and-so, but now I'm allergic to it. Or, you know, when I eat this, my stomach hurts, but it didn't. Will you get into any of that as to why that happens, or?
Yeah, I can talk to that in general. I mean, our bodies are constantly changing, and as we age, things start to break down. So the healthy things that keep our bodies are designed to be finite by God. God didn't intend us to live forever in this body. Certainly spiritually, God intended us to live forever. So our bodies are finite. So, you know, things change constantly, and our cells are breaking down over time. And what we have to understand is, and this is part of God wanting us to kind of protect the bodies we have and treat our bodies as a spiritual entity that we're supposed to keep healthy and do right things for. So to your comment, the fact that our bodies are breaking down, it's up to us to decide, you know, how quickly we want those bodies to those cells to break down, and change effects like that, you know, something you used to eat years ago, you eat now and it causes you more heartburn than it ever did. Because with those cells changing and breaking down, you're not going to have necessarily that natural protection that was in your body at one point. And that's just the life cycle of our bodies, and that's a finite being of our bodies. So that's the way that works. So anyway, we're able to really see again inside these cells and see how our nutrients really function. And poor nutrition, as I'm going to talk about, can lead to these cell mutations, and it will speed up our aging process and basically have these cells mutate. So again, you've got cells that are the individual building blocks of, say, your liver or kidney or whatever, and you start, and heart, and you start to eat things, or you're eating things that aren't healthy to you. Those cells are going to mutate quicker, and those cells aren't going to function as well as they used to when you were younger. And that's going to speed up our life cycles as people. And you know, not that when you think of something like death, I mean, as Christians, we know there's certainly life after death. And again, I feel like God's put us on earth for a certain amount of time to fulfill something, a purpose that He has for us, and understanding that purpose is very important. I'm not trying to take away from the fact that, yeah, let's just all die tomorrow so we can be to heaven. But I know that God has a purpose for us, and that's why if you can protect your bodies as much as you can to fulfill God's purpose for you in this world, I think that's very important. So I've got down here on the page how important, you know, water is very important for our cells. Our cells are the membrane around the cell, which is really the brain of the cell, is made up of fats, and it keeps, you know, absorbing and eliminating. It absorbs water, eliminates waste, etc. But that water is very important for what goes on that cell, what goes on inside that nucleus, what goes on for replicating that cell, keeping that DNA intact, etc. Carbohydrates certainly important. That's where we get our energy from. So the carbs that we eat, the good carbs that we eat, that we can get from natural sources. Not talking about the carbs, say, in a sugary substance like ice cream and hot fudge. And I love ice cream and hot fudge. And as an aside, what I'm talking about here, I'm talking about moderation. So, you know, you're not going to make a diet all 3 meals during your day plus snacking on hot fudge and ice cream. You are going to mix in things that are good. So as you look at this list here of foods that are good for you, hopefully you can have a nice balance of that throughout your day to offset the hot fudge, the ice cream, again, which is my favorite thing on this earth. And I certainly partake in that a lot. But you know, the idea is to balance your diet, not to go extremely over the top, you know, with the bad stuff. So carbohydrates, very important. Amino acids, and we'll talk about sources for these things. Essential fatty acids, those are the omega-3 fatty acids. Vitamins, minerals, and Also, the environment is very important to our healthy cells. Not only are the things I just mentioned above, but the environment. So our physical nature, how, physically, how in shape we are. I feel like it's very important for me to keep my body in shape. And I do exercise a lot. And I do that really so I can eat more and probably eat more junk. But I think that, that does offset that stuff to some extent. So I would encourage all of you, maybe with the help of your doctor, if you're not already doing something, like just something like getting out and walk or going to a mall and walk when it's bad or whatever, to consider doing something that's going to exercise and physically help your body that way. So, mental. It's interesting, but our whole lives take place where? Your whole life takes place where?
In your brain.
Between your two ears in your brain. And your mental state of thinking through things and handling things like stress and handling things within your control is so vital to your health. Because as your mind starts to stress about things that you can't control, it was interesting, I just had a comment to the staff the other day about a book I was reading called No Hero, and it was the guy who did the SEAL that shot Bin Laden, and it's his story of basic training. And he talked about being suspended up on they were doing a climb exercise during his SEAL training, and he was 150 foot up on this pretty sheer cliff, and he was just frozen. He had a fear of heights to start with, and he couldn't move up or down. And his brain suddenly went to calculating how far it was about to fall. So they had these guys that were assisting the SEALs during their training, and this guy climbed over beside him, and he was, in his mind, he thought, oh good, here comes somebody to rescue me. And the guy didn't provide a rescue at all. What he told him, he said, I want to tell you something about your 3-foot world. And he said, 3 feet, reaching up, that's all you can control at this point. You can't control how far it is to the bottom, how far it is to the top, but you can master your 3-foot world and concentrate on that, refocus on that, and find your next hand grip, your foot grip, etc., and make your way to top. So he did that, survived. But the point about that 3-foot world is, so many times we worry as individuals about things that are outside of our control. We can't focus God's given us abilities to control certain things. If we're late for something, consistently, God can tell you need to leave earlier, or you make the decision to leave earlier, and control that. But as far as things that are outside of our hands, you really have to just let the Lord take care of it, and hopefully He will give you a peace of mind to do that. So your peace in your mind, to get your mind stress-free and things like that, can really go a long ways for that cell health and keeping that thing cell. And that goes emotionally too, the way you handle emotional stress, things like that, same type of thing. You give it up to God, and certainly the spiritual aspect in there. But our cells are constantly communicating with each other, responding to our environment. And if your cells do not operate efficiently, you can count on a diminishing of certain physical functions, and certainly a diminishing of the way your organs operate and things like that. So next page I've got here. God's naturally put inflammation in our bodies. Does anybody know why that is? You think of inflammation as a bad thing. Why has God put our bodies, why has God given our bodies inflammation?
Like disease. A warning.
So what?
Disease.
To what? Combat disease? Yeah.
It's a warning.
Yep, a warning, exactly. So a certain amount of inflammation is okay. But what I'm going to be talking about here is inflammation that's over that certain amount that we kind of control by the foods that we eat. So U.S. leads the world in inflammation. That isn't a good thing. Why is that? It's because our cell membrane secretes omega-3 fatty acids, enzymes, etc., that convert these things into this chemical called arachidonic acid. But before I get that, so it's because of the food we eat, it's because of the processed foods that we eat that causes the inflammation we have. And that's why the U.S. leads the world in that, because we're so good at taking that nice wheat germ it becomes in whole wheat, and we can manipulate that and get rid of all the good nutrients that will help us combat this inflammation, this extended inflammation. And we process this stuff, and we get the good ingredients right out of there, the good nutrients right out of there, and that's why we lead the world in inflammation. But I'm not going to get into chemical reactions too much, but there's a substance called arachidonic acid, AA. I've got it here, and it is such an evil thing to our bodies. And the idea is to avoid foods that are high in arachidonic acid. And these are basically your foods right here that will help you. These are lower in arachidonic acid, and we'll get into some foods that are higher here, but these are the foods that'll help reduce your inflammation. And inflammation is really the basis for just about every disease I can think of, from cancer to heart disease to diabetes. All those have the root in inflammation. High blood pressure, inflammation. All those have the root in inflammation. So if we can reduce inflammation within our bodies, we will get better. These diseases will have shorter outcomes, and they will get better. Did you have a question?
Well, what exactly is inflammation?
So inflammation is like an extended swelling. So if you hurt your ankle, say you're out somewhere and you twist your ankle, what happens is the body responds to that, and it sends certain things to that area to combat whatever you've just experienced, or you get a bee sting or something like that. So your body's going to naturally send stuff there, and by sending stuff there, it actually increases the fluid in that area, and it causes that area to swell or inflame. And what that does is that causes problems. If it's short term, it's fine to take care of that, but sometimes it leads to long-term things. And when you're talking about like diabetes or something like that, and you've got inflammation going on within your body. Normally diabetes might be the pancreas, and that puts stress on that pancreas to operate the way it should, to produce that insulin. And all of a sudden those insulin cells start dying off because our bodies are only born with so much insulin cells that will produce insulin. And then our bodies have a tough time keeping up with managing the sugar that's in our bloodstream and getting out of that bloodstream into the organs, into cells where it can be used for energy. And that is one cause of unchecked inflammation. So
how do we know right now, if we're healthy, how do we know how do I know something in me isn't inflamed?
Well, I mean, the best thing to do is your physical checkups. Your doctor looks for things like that. Your doctor will through if you're experiencing swelling somewhere in your body that's not natural. Like when I go for my yearly checkup, my doctor will check my lymph nodes to see if I've got swelling. He will check under my armpits. He'll check my throat, stuff like that for abnormal swelling. But normally, if you've got swelling going on inside your body that you can physically feel, that's an indication there's something going on in there that may be abnormal, unless you've hurt yourself recently. So if the doctor is like pushing on your stomach there, and he's feeling something maybe a little bit larger than it should be, he may ask you, have you just recently hurt your stomach or something? I remember I was pulling on a log one time, I ran my stomach with a stick, and didn't think too much about it. 2 days later, I got some swelling, and about a week after that, I had a checkup by the doctor. He felt that. He could tell that I maybe did a little bit of damage in there, and he told me, if that doesn't heal in a couple weeks, 3 weeks, it still feels, and he had me feel a spot. So that's how you're going to know. But what I'm talking about today are ways through proper nutrition to prevent that swelling to begin in the first place, or if you've got a disease state, to really reduce the badness of that disease state, the outcome of that disease state, the unhealthy outcome of that disease state by eating properly. I mean, my mom had cancer and pancreatic cancer, and there's not too much research in pancreatic cancer, and the typical life expectancy with pancreatic cancer, and again, these are typical life expectancy. That means that doesn't mean somebody with pancreatic cancer might not live months, years beyond this, but it's about 9 months once you're diagnosed. My mom lived a year and a half. And one thing when we found out my mom was diagnosed is we put her on a diet similar to what we're talking about here, and she had a better outcome for that. I had a buddy of mine that was given a less than a year diagnosis. He was actually given 9 months to live, and through some things with medication, but also proper nutrition, he lived 5 years beyond that diagnosis. And in that 5 years, he witnessed his daughter, I mean, a younger guy, he witnessed his daughter getting married, he witnessed 2 grandchildren from the son. He was involved at Ohio State. He witnessed his national championship he was involved in as a coach. So, that 5 years can really make a difference in somebody's life. So if you can extend your life out by following a stricter diet like this, who knows from a medical standpoint what may be developed from a medicine standpoint that could really help you. And then, they're coming out with different cancer drugs all the time. And I tell people, again, I'm getting too much from the pharmacist side of things now, but if you can extend your life through chemo, people weigh stuff. I said, even 6 months, there may be another chemo drug out there that may help you to get you from that 6 month to 5 year point or then beyond. So look at when AIDS first came out, HIV. And people weren't given much of a chance to live with AIDS, and now you've got people who live with AIDS. And some of the drug companies, especially like a Merck, really went to bat, and they put all their resources for developing an AIDS drug. And
now it's a chronic illness.
Now it's become a chronic illness. So my cousin, great guy, probably 10 years younger than me, died of AIDS back in the mid-90s, and so that we just didn't have the stuff. So anyway, there's stuff coming out all the time.
People, I have a friend who, his partner died of AIDS in 1982.
Mm-hmm.
He was HIV positive. He has never developed the disease, but he's still HIV positive. But he has lived on a macrobiotic diet his whole life. He's done all kinds of things, not because of the AIDS, but just because of who he is. He exercises, and the macrobiotic diet is just, he's followed it forever.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not quite as old as me, but he's in at least his late 50s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. So arachidonic acid is a real problem in this country. Again, as a breakdown of the foods that we eat, there should be a real good balance between, if you look at that third bullet there, these cell membranes secrete omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. There should be a 1-to-1 balance in those things. Here in this country, it's about 1 to 15, meaning that for every 1 part omega-3 fatty acids, which is a good one, that's excreted, and that's going to help the organs and provide energy to other cells, etc. There's about 15 or 20 of the omega-6s that are secreted. So that's a problem. It's very important to have a better balance, and following a diet closer to this will help you maintain that healthy balance, and will help those healthy fatty acids do their job and protect our DNA.
There's almost no protein on this.
Yeah, I'll talk about protein. So this is and again we're talking about inflammation. We'll talk about protein too as kind of a good building block. So arachidonic acid, next page. What is found in higher foods? So basically, as a basic thing, your white foods are very high in arachidonic acid and are bad for you. So like sugar, certainly I said that with sugar. White flour, if you can cook with more of a whole grain flour, whole wheat flour, something like that, a brown flour, that's going to be better for you. White pasta, bread, egg yolks contain arachidonic acid. Farm-raised animals, they have so much in the grains that they raise these farm-raised animals with. A lot of those grains, a lot of those pesticides that they use, chemicals that they use, are very high in arachidonic acid. So, people think that it's wonderful to eat fish, and normally it is. But you'd be better off eating a piece of steak that was from an animal that was more free range than you would be eating a farm-raised catfish. So, you know, I see catfish on the menu so many places, and people think, oh, I'm gonna not eat that red meat fish steak because it's bad for me. I'll eat the farm-raised catfish. You'd be better off eating that if it's a natural, free-range steak that you know, like something from Whole Foods or something like that. You know, you'd be much better off because these farm-raised things are very high in arachidonic acid. Yes.
Is that like people who raise catfish to sell?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
they have a pond and they put all this, you're
Yep.
saying that's how they get it. It's
Yeah,
just,
exactly.
it doesn't
yeah,
come
they,
in
yeah,
somebody
because
out.
they want the bigger catfish. They want, you know, these catfish to not die off from something they're going to get. So it's tough to commercially have something in the wild and make a larger profit on it than if you go out there and you have your wild caught salmon and things like that, which salmon is just excellent. If it's wild salmon, excellent source. I mean, if you could eat salmon 7 days a week, it'd be great. 2-3 days a week would be excellent towards helping all this stuff. It's got the high omega-3 essential fatty acid in there, and that'll help boost your level between omega-6 closer to the 1-to-1 that you might be looking at. So, yeah, I've got that down here. So lower in on processed foods. Again, processed foods are just terrible, and you know I'm guilty of eating processed foods. I get my box of granola in the morning, and it used to be, you know, granola back, especially when I was growing up in my younger days, granola was thought to be wonderful for you because of all the whole grains, etc. Again, they remove so much when they process that food of things that are good in there, so much of the good nutrition. Plus, they put a lot of sugar in the processed foods, and the bad sugar that isn't going to lead to the good carbohydrates that we need for that healthy cell function. So lower foods, wild fish, I should say in there, wild free-range chicken, excellent source of, you know, lowering your arachidonic acid intake. Vegetables are great, especially the vegetables that are full of color, the red vegetables, the green vegetables. Those are excellent things for you. The same way with the fruits. Sometimes you have to watch the fruits, a huge fruit intake because of the amount of sugar in there. But if you get like you know, something like strawberries, you know, I just drew a blank. But so many of those things are good fruits to help prevent offset the free radicals that are roaming our bodies and could lead to cancer cells and things like that.
Blueberries are really.
Yep. Yeah, blueberries are great. Olive oil is so good as opposed to vegetable oil for your cooking. Whole grain pasta I kind of talked about. Wheat flour compared to white flour. Organic additive-free foods. Or organic foods are good, I should say. That's a apostrophe there. Additive-free foods. You know, they put preservatives again in those additives like BHT. If you read on a label and it's got BHT in there, these are all things that are commercially available and allowed by our government to be put in these various foods that we process. And they put these things in there so they can extend the shelf life of this food that you've got sitting there. Whatever it is, your cereal or just whatever it may be. But if it's got BHT, PHA, it's called benzoyl peroxide. I just remember peroxide. If you look on the label and it's got peroxide in there, not going to be good for you. Sodium bisulfite, another preservative, not good for you. Again, those are all found in additives, and
All the
those
dyes, too.
and yeah, the dyes. Those are all things that have been linked to cancer-causing things. So you know that's why if you can get away from the processed foods, and again, moderation. You know, if you want to enjoy that granola in the morning, like I still do, I just don't stick a whole ton of stuff in there. I just moderation.
Gosh, I just went to the grocery and bought another box of granola.
You know, just eat.
Well, I'd eat it every morning.
Well, start by eating half.
What's a good cereal?
Well, I'll tell you what. Start by what I would do is I would go someplace that has a good oatmeal, not the instant oatmeal, not the Quaker oatmeal, but
Steel coated.
yeah, that's a great oatmeal. I would do that and fix that and put some granola on top of that, about half of what you're using now, And that's a good balance for you. So you're still having some, bad granola on there, but you're also having very healthy oatmeal. And that'll help move that granola through your system faster, and you'll poop it out basically before your body gets a chance to absorb it. So that's what's so good about the steel cut oats.
On the list of things, I've gotten in more of a habit of reading what's in something.
Good.
If I'm not familiar
Uh-huh.
with it,
I'm
And when
ready
you,
for granola too.
and when you have 20 to 25 things in
Yeah.
something, isn't it like,
Oh.
don't go past 6 or
That's
something
just it.
like that?
Yeah,
It's
if you got a list like that,
things
you might as well put
you
that thing
don't-
back on the shelf, truly.
Things that I,
You don't
as
want
a-
that
It's got
stuff.
things in it I
if
can't
I'm not a
pronounce.
scientist,
You don't want
I
that
don't
stuff
even know
running
what it
around
means.
inside your body.
Yeah, and my youngest daughter, she lives close and I'm down there a lot, and she has periodically or consistently buys bread, packaged bread, and sometimes I'm sure it's the same loaf, like 2 weeks it sits out.
No.
It's shut out, but it's sitting out there and it's not moldy. I try to eat gluten-free, and so I have to take stuff out and package it and put it in the freezer
Uh-huh.
because probably it might go 3 days. I don't think so, unless I keep it in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
But it's because it doesn't have all that stuff in there
Uh-huh.
that,
Yeah, exactly.
Did,
Yeah.
did you say BHT or PHT?
B as in boy, HT.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. Next page is about sugars. And I already talked about sugars a little bit with your pancreas. And what you want to do is to avoid, like I said, it's okay to eat sugar. Just don't make 3 meals out of it. But what happens to your body is when you eat, and I was a Coca-Cola addict, Coca-Cola, not Coke addict, Coca-Cola addict. And I would have probably 3-4 cans of Coke a day. And what that was doing to my blood sugar level is it was spiking it. So, blood sugar level might be constant. I drink my can of Coke and put it right up here. So right away, my blood sugar's loaded with sugar. My bloodstream's loaded with sugar. And my pancreas was having to work so hard to get that sugar processed, produce that insulin, get that sugar out of the blood where it needed to go. And again, even when it got out of the blood, it was the false carbohydrates. It wasn't really doing any good. But it was working so hard. That's very stressful on my pancreas. And I'm down to probably about three cans of Coke a week. I'd like to get down to 0, but I can't yet, but I'm working on it. But anyway, that's what happens when you eat something. When you eat that candy bar, when you eat that hot fudge sundae, it spikes your blood sugar. Your pancreas has to work so hard. And again, we've only got so many of those insulin cells that we have that we're born with. Once those are out, they're out. And then that's when somebody becomes a diabetic because our bloodstream can't keep up with that processing of that sugar.
I read something recently, and I don't know if it's true, but originally when Coke began, it has cocaine. That's
It
the
did.
Coke.
It had
Yes,
trace
it
cocaine
did.
in it. And that was part of the addictive property of Coke initially, yeah. But that was back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They got rid of that probably around 1908, 1912.
So it
It was
doesn't
marketed
still have
as a
any-
medication.
What's that?
It was marketed as a medication.
Yeah, and being a pharmacist, I used to sell Coke syrup all the time.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
And so, they talk about the bad things about Coke, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you Coke has good things, but for a lot of people that had digestive problems, patients, they used to come in the pharmacy and buy Coke syrup.
Right.
And they would drink that, or they would just drink a Coke because it would help. Because as food, you've heard about maybe having acid build up on your radiator, and you can pour Coke on there and it'll dissolve that stuff. Well, Coke also, in moderation, will help with your food metabolism because it'll help dissolve that food and break it up. Now again, I'm not preaching here that somebody should go out and drink a can of Coke. There are other ways to do that. But in my early practice as a pharmacy, people thought that was an acceptable thing to buy that Coke syrup and ingest that because it helped them with their digestive problems they were having. So anyway, yeah, cocaine's been out of it for a long time, but
Say, in fact,
Still, it's
you're
addicted
talking-
because
you're
of
talking about
caffeine.
Coke. I used to drink like you 2 or 3 cans a day,
uh-huh.
and a couple spoonsful of sugar in every cup of coffee and in every glass
Yeah.
of iced tea.
Sure.
And And I realized I was putting on just so much weight, so I took myself off all sugars,
Yeah.
all pop, but I ate as much as I wanted to of fruit, vegetables, meat, potatoes, regular meat, not processed meat.
Uh-huh.
And in 2.5 months, without changing activity, I lost 60 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You mentioned potatoes. Again, rule of thumb is if it's white, it's not going to be the best thing for you. White potatoes, not great. Sweet potatoes, much better for you because of the fiber in sweet potatoes. White potatoes have breakdown. They're going to break down to the unhealthy carbohydrates, which is sugar. And again, we talked about the dangers of sugar. So I love baked potatoes. I will still go out to a restaurant. I'll get a baked potato. Again, I try and keep that in moderation. I know the danger, but you know, I'm not saying we're all perfect here. So, what's that?
I'm diabetic,
Okay.
and French fries raise my blood sugar higher.
Oh, yeah.
Than
We got a lot of
anything
things
I
going on
eat.
there. You've got the saturated fatty acids going on there. You've got the white potato going on there. So, anyway.
I mean, if I have to get, French fries comes with whatever I'm ordering. I just eat a few.
Uh-huh.
But when I get home and check my sugar, if I didn't eat anything but meat and French fries, it's up there.
Yeah. So this last page is the very, very important page here. So let's talk about things: vitamins, minerals, and natural fibers. Vitamin E is so good for you. Contains powerful antioxidants. So as our cells start to mutate for whatever reason, because we're not eating too well, you can help with that unhealthy diet by making sure you're getting good vitamin E. I love natural sources, so soy oil, soy, wheat germ, those are going to be very good for vitamin E. Vitamin C also plays a role in antioxidants. So, I mentioned vitamin C here: oranges, strawberries, kale. A lot of these salads these days, kale just kind of came on our radar. I'd say within the last 5 years, putting them in salads. Great source of stuff. Kale's just excellent for you. Good source of vitamin C. Again, good source of antioxidants. The B vitamins, B3, that's niacin, B6, B12, folic acid. Again, those all help amongst other things. And there's so many of these vitamin Bs that are just mentioned here are so good to maintain the integrity of that cell. They maintain the integrity of that DNA. They're just excellent for you. Sources I've got here are spinach and salmon, just so good for you. Zinc, taking zinc, such as spinach, also great for that DNA integrity. Amino acids. So talking about protein here, somebody mentioned it wasn't really on the list here, but yeah, those are excellent. Chicken, and I've got beef down here. If it's a good natural grain-fed beef or free-range type beef, and I should say natural grasses, things like that, it's going to be so good for you. But of course, the proteins outside of the cells, and they do so much. Protein does so much for repairing our cells when they're damaged, but also we've got these different things that our cells are kind of hung. I said that our body's made up of cells, these building blocks. These cells will attach to each other and form like a kidney, form a liver, form a heart. These cells attach each other. And what happens in cancer is cancer cells mutate and they interfere with that attachment. So you have a breakdown in those organs. You start to have a breakdown in the organs because of the cancer cells replacing the good cells. And these cells can break off and roam around the body. So now you got cancer cells going over your body. But the proteins help in that binding. So it's very important to have a diet that's got a healthy protein content in it. I had a friend of mine that went on a wild diet and stopped the protein stuff, and he had so many diseases going on with that. Finally, after about 5 years, he gave up his diet, which was supposed to be healthy. He eliminated all his protein. And, we understand why now, because that protein's so important to keeping that bond in place, to keep those healthy cells in place together, and forming that organ, forming that heart, that kidney, whatever it may be.
Why are there different?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Why are cancers in different parts of the body treated differently? Why? It's my understanding.
Yeah,
that-
they are.
Why is that? So a cancer cell is not just a cancer cell, it's a certain kind of.
Well, exactly, because as that cell mutates within that body, all our cells have a certain function within our body. They're supposed to be in a certain place. That goes back to the DNA that you know has that cell knows where to be. So if you take a heart cell out and stick it in the kidney cell area, it's not going to function the same. That heart cell is functioning to stabilize, build that heart, help that heart beat, etc. The kidney cells are there in the kidney to help eliminate waste. So you've got two different things. So that's why if you've got a cell that mutates in the kidney, you've got kidney cancer, it's going to be treated differently because the cancer treatments are going to react differently on that cell and kill that cell differently or minimize that cell differently than it would as it would on the heart. So that's the reason why they have to be a little bit more specific. But that being said, they are discovering as a through cancer research that they still haven't quite gotten to a point where that cell mutates to fight it there, and how that cell mutation occurs within that various cell, within that various organ. If they can get to that level, that's all the same. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold, so.
Cancer is really, even if a cancer is in the same place, it's different. It occurs differently. It's like it isn't a disease, it's a whole bunch of different diseases.
Yeah, it is, you're right.
I have a friend that has breast cancer, and she has 3 different kinds of breast cancer.
Yeah.
And they're all breast cancer, but they're 3 different kinds, and they're fought 3 different ways.
You guys know Richard. Richard, he's on his, this is his 3rd or 4th cancer now. They're all different cancers. They're all different cancers, and they're going to treat that differently because it's a different cancer. But the other common thing is, again, no matter what kind of cancer that is, the very bottom line that is it's inflammation. And these things here, if you eat these things, will reduce inflammation. Whether if it's a finger you just hurt some way and it's inflamed, so it hurts and you can't bend it, or it's that cancer cell within your body that's inflamed. These things are going to go to that area and help that cell recover quicker. So anyway, yes, go ahead.
I have a question. They say vitamins are good for you or not good for you.
I'm saying these particular vitamins that are
Not
mentioned
something like
here.
vitamins you take over the counter.
Okay,
Like
I would prefer to have you take get vitamins from a natural source, because the vitamins you get over the counter have been processed, and I'm not saying those are as good as your natural source. Now, if you're telling me that you're not going to eat enough spinach to get the vitamins you need out of that spinach, then I would say, yeah, it's better to take that supplement than to not have anything to help that. But the ideal situation would be to get your vitamins naturally from the foods that God has put on this planet to help our bodies survive. God didn't make store-bought vitamins. God put everything we need right out there, and somebody's pasture. You go to these farm markets, they're excellent. Go to farm markets when they start in the summertime, and some farm markets run all year long. So there's a mall up in Worthington that has a market, and if you can stay away from the person making the sweet rolls and navigate the person. I can't all the time, so I'll tell you that.
Isn't it still up there?
I'm sorry?
The person that sells buffalo meat?
Yeah, yep.
Awesome
Yep,
meat.
there you go.
Awesome meat.
And again, I don't know if that individual person, but if they're telling you it's more of a natural product, wouldn't be bad for
I
you.
use B6 I had neuropathy really bad in my toes, and they put me on all kinds of different things which sent me in outer space. And I started taking, a pharmacist told me actually, try B6. And I started taking massive doses of B6.
Yeah.
And then I cut it back until
Yeah.
it didn't work, and then I take B6 for it, and I don't have any pain on my toes anymore.
Yeah. So a B complex vitamin that's going to pick up the 3s, the 6s, the 12s, that's going to be very good for you if, again, you feel like you're not getting enough through your natural sources there. So let's see, I think I'm down to the zinc and spinach. Spinach is just a great thing.
Carol Abbott.
Yeah,
Oh,
my
I'm sorry.
question about spinach. How much a day do you have to eat of that to get what your body needs?
Well, I mean, you know, I would have it as a side. If you could do it once a day, that would be excellent.
Like a cup or
Well,
half a cup?
and again, I'm not the nutritionalist to really tell you like these things. You can probably look that up online if you're good about looking things up.
If it's a cooked vegetable,
Googling
half
things.
a cup is a serving. If it's
But
an
yeah,
uncooked
that's
vegetable,
probably about
a cup.
right. I mean, you know, my serving size, I'm thinking of maybe a little bit different than your serving size that you're thinking of, and your body and everything. So anyway, it probably varies. But again, if you could do it once a day, that'd be great. But if you're doing it 3 days a week, that'd be excellent too. I mean, gosh, I just had a spinach salad yesterday, and my bowl was just full of spinach. Now again, if you cook it down, that may just have been half a cup. The spinach just does shrink down. But anyway,
I know.
amino acids, chicken, beef, talked about that. Carbohydrates, fibers, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, beans, natural, beans versus processed stuff.
What is processed beans? What's
They would be like, you go into the store and you've got like a can of your Mexican, beans that you're gonna use.
no, I buy all mine in a bag.
That's good. So frozen, that'd be so much better than like a processed type of thing. As far as minerals go, I wish I would have added this stuff, but magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, iron, copper, manganese, those are all just great minerals. And again, you can look a lot of stuff up online, but anyway, I think I'm at about my 45-minute point. So,
Keep
You're
going.
fine.
so no, I'm really, I think that's it. So, what questions do you guys have? Go ahead.
I just want to note that you have cocoa on here.
I've got what?
Cocoa on there.
I do have cocoa on there?
Yes. So we've eaten a lot of these things today.
Yeah.
Where's my cocoa at?
Cocoa powder.
Oh, cocoa.
That's what.
Oh,
this
right
is
here,
about.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Again, cocoa in moderation, especially the darker cocos.
This was dark
the-
cocoa.
Yeah, so that's now again, the problem with your cocoa is you
I put a
sweeten
bunch
it
of
up.
sugar in it.
Yeah, so, but yeah, you're right. The, on this list here, cocoa's in there because that's a good antioxidant.
Kidding.
Those, to eat a piece of dark chocolate a day, I'm talking about just a piece.
Yes.
Again, unfortunately, you have that sugar in there, but you're also getting the benefits of antioxidant, which is what this is. It's low in arachidonic acid. The cocoa bean itself, until we do everything we do with it, is low processed, is lower in arachidonic acid. It's a good substitute for something.
What about stevia?
Stevia, I like stevia myself. I stay away from saccharin.
Yeah.
If you guys, I've seen too much stuff with saccharin, read too much stuff, too much family history of saccharin and causing cancer and stuff like that. And they always tell you with these tests, it's still on the market, it's still generally accepted as a sweetener, but they tell you, you'd have to eat so much of that stuff. The stuff we use to get bad effects in animals is just so much more than you'll ever eat. I just don't like saccharin. I just stay away from that. But stevia is probably my artificial sweetener of choice. And I saw Coke just came out with a new stevia Coke. I don't know if you've seen commercials for that. Yeah. It's in their red can, but it's got green labeling on it, and it probably has a little stevia logo on it too. So again, if you're drinking pop, I would stay away from the artificial like Coke. What's the Diet Coke?
Diet Coke.
I think you're better off drinking a regular Coke than a Diet Coke, honestly, because of the artificial sweeteners in there. So I like stevia as an artificial sweetener for now. I just the jury's probably still out in this stuff, but if you're going to have a sweetener in an artificial sweetener, yeah, I'd probably navigate towards stevia.
Becky Galentine got me started on stevia, and I bought at a health food store. I bought 2 containers about this round and maybe about this high. It took me over a year to use one of those. So, and I mean, you think it's expensive, maybe $15 or something, for that. Spread out over a year, it's nothing, it's, but it is, you have to really be careful, because if you put very much, and you can run.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
it
just
does.
So much
Yeah,
sweeter.
I like iced tea, and I'll sweeten my iced tea with stevia. And my wife's got me. I used to do like a pack and a half per a glass, and now she's got me. So I'm really doing like a half.
I
So
like iced tea, but I don't want it.
yeah. I mean, she can drink her iced tea without any sweetener. I can't. I've got to have. You know me. I'm trying to transition from Coke to iced tea. I've got to have that sweet taste. So unfortunately,
What was the,
raw sugar? Raw.
it would be like unprocessed sugar.
So is that even fair?
Well, raw sugar in itself in moderation would be better than, I think, saccharin. So yeah, a lot of times these restaurants, if you go out, they'll have iced tea and they'll give you that container. Sometimes you'll see on there, they'll have like that raw sugar packet. That to me is better. I'll if they've only got that or the saccharin on there,
Take the sugar.
I will go with the raw sugar. So yeah, yeah,
can I go back to the acids?
yeah.
The bad acid is what?
Omega-6 really is the omega-6, and it's not a bad acid when it's kept in check with omega-3. So if you have that 1-to-1 balance, it's okay. But where it gets out of control and it can break down that arachidonic acid into those. And I didn't put these chemicals down here. Maybe I did, but 2 chemicals that cause inflammation. The prostaglandins and leukotrienes. How arachidonic acid gets processed into inflammation is the more you have in omega-6s, which are the bad fatty acids, they'll get broken down faster and lead to more of those things. But if you have the omega-3 diet, if you keep that in balance, then you'll feel better.
Is there anything in here that says about omega-6?
Yeah.
Where we get that, the omega-6? What food? Are there foods that have more of that?
Well, yeah, the foods. So you get your high fatty foods like your vegetable oils. Those are high in omega-6s. Your saturated oils high in omega-6s. So those are 2 things I can think about. Your fats are normally going to be high in omega-6s. So if you look at a fatty food, that's going to be higher in omega-6s.
Is salmon, is it high in?
If it's farm raised, it would be high in omega-6s. If it's natural, which is what I recommend, it's high in omega-3s. And if you eat 3 to 4 salmon dishes a week, you're going to combat those bad omega-6s really well. And you can take like fish oil too. You can look at your fish oils. My wife does that because we don't eat salmon 3 or 4 days a week. We'll eat it once a week if we're lucky, and normally between every other week we'll eat it maybe once for sure. And we're trying to do better on eating natural salmon. Again, it's natural salmon, but she'll take a fish oil capsule. Then again, it's that kind of the fish oil capsules aren't as bad for you. I mentioned like vitamins, and what God didn't make vitamins that are on the shelves that are processed. The fish oil capsules are like more of an extract, so they're not that bad for you. So if you look on that, and if they're high in omega-3s, they'd be a good supplement for you to take too.
I noticed
Yes,
that the vitamins and stuff, you didn't mention like an aspirin, like the 81 milligram aspirin for...
Yeah, again, that's not really a nutrient, that's a drug. And we kind of talk, so again, I would recommend for the guys 55 and above to take an 81 milligram aspirin a day. The women should consult with your doctor. They've changed that. Used to say men and women should be taking 81 milligrams a day, which is low dose aspirin. Aspirin in general is 325 milligrams. So you take that low dose aspirin, and it's normally got on label, it's heart healthy. But recent studies with women, unfortunately, that has been linked to certain things, including cancer, and the jury's still out on that now with women. So they're kind of revisiting that. I know my wife's doctor took her off of that, who's a female doctor. She took my wife off the daily aspirin regimen that she had been on for years, but they're coming out with all these new studies for women that they don't think it's more detrimental, perhaps, than it is. But now, if you're, again, you should consult your doctor, because if you're getting at a certain age and you don't have your family history shows lack of cancer but heart disease, they'll probably tell you to take this 81 milligram dose of aspirin.
I've also heard it's better.
Reduces inflammation, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's why you take aspirin. So, inflammation causes pain. So if you've got something, we talked about inflammation before, if you've got swelling, that's going to constrict that nerve, because you've got nerves normally running through that swelling area. That's what causes pain. So aspirin reduces inflammation, which will reduce the pain, because it will shrink that swelling, and it'll allow that nerve not to become compacted and cause swelling. Now, I always tell people, Tylenol, as a pharmacist, I think I mentioned this last time, I don't like Tylenol for long periods of time. I much prefer you take an aspirin than Tylenol. Again, depending on your condition. If you've got, if you're worried about like your platelets and things like that, or your stomach problems, there's a reason why you may not want to take an aspirin. But from a Tylenol standpoint, Tylenol does reduce pain, but it doesn't reduce it through reducing inflammation. So Tylenol really doesn't have any impact on inflammation. So especially younger people, I used to always say, we'll take if they're. I got in my sister-in-law's car one day, and she had a bottle of 500 Tylenol. I said, what are you taking that you need a 500 bottle of Tylenol? She said, well, I get these aches and pains. And again, I said this last time, Tylenol's metabolized in the liver, very harmful on the liver if you use it regularly over a 3, 4, 5+ day period. It can become harmful to the liver. And if your doctor's got you on it, please stay on it. But I'm telling you, just in general, as a pharmacist, I prefer for somebody to take an aspirin over Tylenol, unless you've got problems with like bleeding, or you're on like something that's going to alter your platelet count, like a Coumadin or something like that, because of maybe a heart problem or high blood pressure or something like that. So anyway, but yeah, Tylenol overall is less safe than aspirin.
When I was taking the baby aspirin, I started to get little bruises.
That's causing bleeding.
So then I stopped.
Again, you've got this clotting factor that starts with your platelets, and your platelets are running around your bloodstream, and you get something that will cause a hole in your bloodstream, basically, like you hit your hand or something, and that's what causes that bleeding, that bruising. The platelets aren't coagulating enough to stop that blood from going out of that vessel and getting into your tissues and causing that bleeding. So if something like aspirin will interfere with that platelet adhering together and causing that clot, that'll stop you. But a lot of people that have heart problems have these clots run around their bodies, and that's the reason for the low dose aspirin, is because my doctor at my age, and certainly for men, we have this problem. Our clotting factor, our bodies, these platelets will clot sooner than like in a woman. So if they have us take these low dose aspirin, it will prevent heart attacks, it will prevent strokes, because our blood's not going to clot as easily and stick together, and these platelets aren't going to stick together and have this little ball of clot running around your body that's going to get somewhere and not get through and cause that heart attack or cause that stroke. So that's the reason why we, doctors will have men, it's recommended men take a low dose aspirin to help prevent that heart attack, to help prevent those strokes.
And I've heard it's better to take it at night than in the morning.
Yeah. The reason is most heart attacks are prevalent in the morning, and at night you take that aspirin at night, so your body has time to reduce that platelet adhesive function during the night, so in the morning you're not going to wake up and have that heart attack first thing. Whereas if you woke up and took your aspirin in the morning, it may take your body a few hours to react to that, and in the meantime you could have a heart attack. So yeah, I take mine at night, so you're right.
I've been reading lately some kind of positive things about caffeine. Is there anything about the good things that they've said?
Yeah. So the caffeine helps blood get to areas quicker. So yeah, a lot of your headache medications have caffeine in them. They're like a malty thing, so they'll have caffeine there. So they'll combine an aspirin with caffeine, because when caffeine expands like the veins, it enables that drug to get to the area quicker and get there. So there are some positive things to caffeine, again, in moderation. Caffeine is in a lot of over-the-counter medications as well as some of the prescription medications. They combine the main drug that's going to have the effect with caffeine, because caffeine will get it to the area quicker. So, but if you have too much caffeine, that's not healthy for the heart because of that.
Stimulant?
It's a stimulant, yes. It's going to cause that heart to beat a little bit different than it would without caffeine. So you have to keep that in moderation. And I don't mind like the Excedrins. We'll combine an aspirin with a caffeine. That's not a bad product. If you have a headache, it's going to get there quicker. It's going to help you get rid of that headache quicker. But you don't want to start taking Excedrin daily, because eventually that caffeine's not going to be good for you.
Another thing I noticed, talking about cramps, and I'd heard on bananas, eating bananas helps with cramps.
Yeah, so I have potassium in there. It's very good for your body. Potassium, again, I talked about cell function, but going back to my physiology roots, potassium's so necessary to help those tissues perform, those muscles perform the right way. You constantly have things moving in and out of those cells, and potassium helps that. So if you get cramping and you get something where your muscles are tensing up, the potassium will help you eliminate that tenseness. It'll help open up those cells, and oxygen, and that's really the thing that causes the cramping is the lack of oxygen to that area. So the potassium will help transport that oxygen inside that cell and prevent that cramping. So yeah, bananas are a great source of potassium.
Watermelon too.
Is all fruit high in potassium?
No, and you'd have to look that up again. I'm not a nutritionalist, so I really can't answer which fruits are high. I know bananas are the highest, but that differs than a strawberry. Strawberries aren't necessarily high in potassium.
Oranges, citrus fruits are. And
Yeah, your citrus
watermelon.
fruits.
Milk
Yeah.
has potassium in it too, I think.
Does
Milk.
I don't know.
Milk?
Milk. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are some natural things going on in milk that probably have potassium, but not nearly what you would get from eating a banana. So have that with your oatmeal, granola, a little bit of bananas on there, strawberries, excellent.
But once again, if you're not getting through natural, with calcium pills, tablets,
Yeah. So you're talking about calcium now or potassium?
calcium.
With your milk?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And women recommend, I recommend this pharmacist calcium supplement, certainly because of your bone structure. Your bones, unfortunately, lose calcium more readily than men do, and women have a higher risk of breaking a bone because of the
But you also
holes
start
that
out with little
osteoporosis is caused, yeah.
So if
Yeah.
I got a
They're-
bone that's this big and I only
Yeah.
have half of it, it's this big. If I got a bone that's this
They
big and I
are
have
more
half-
frail. Yep, they are more frail than a man's bone, so.
What about magnesium
Magnesium, great for your body. That's great
for cramping?
for, it helps in cramping. Magnesium's just great. And again, spinach is an excellent source of magnesium, or you can take a magnesium supplement to get that too.
My doctor said be sure and take a vitamin D every day.
Yeah, yeah. That's going to help. D is going to help with your bone structure. So that's probably why he's telling you to do that. Yep.
Helps your body absorb.
Yeah, it helps with absorption too. Exactly. Helps absorb those good nutrients. Yeah.
Been interesting,
Good. Good.
Very.
very.
All right. Well, pleasure to meet with you guys again. Yeah, I'm around. If you have any questions about anything, either prescription use or nutrient use, just let me know. You know where to find me, I'm sure. Thank you, guys.